This hangout is now live. Yeah. So, welcome to the vertical edge of Western civilization yet again. I am your host, David Alexander English. Wow, that was really cool.
Is this better now?
This is show number 146, and today is Wednesday, Mercury Day, day of communication. And what I found is that when it's the Mercury retrograde and it's the Mercury day of the week, it's a perfect day for realizing what the major messages are for this Mercury retrograde period. And yeah, so today is January 28th. I could be wrong. Yep, 28th. Yay! So, what's going on? As you can see, it's a bit overcast here today. My iPhone weather app says that there's no chance of rain, but I don't know. Looks like it's raining out there. Could have to pack it up pretty quick here soon, but we'll see. It's good to do a show anyway, because I love doing it. And let's see what's going on. I left my canvas, my roll of canvas in the car. So what's going on in the DaViD universe is I posted the 5-minute preview of Kelly's movie, Return of the Magi remix, on both YouTube and Vimeo last evening, and they're still private. I haven't released them yet because I want to contact the people that are actually in them first before, give them a little heads up before they suddenly appear in the grand media of the world. And so I'll hopefully be doing that over the next couple of days. And so that.
Looking good, my man. Looking good.
Thank you. So that's kind of exciting to be getting to that point. I've also decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to send out a cover letter explaining who I am and what the project is about and everything to everybody that's in it, and giving them an opportunity, a window of opportunity to opt out of being involved in it. And yeah, that seems like the thing to do. So I made a list of everybody that's contributed to it so far, and we'll be sending that out, that little packet out, refining it tonight, and hopefully start mailing it out tonight. And yeah, I'm really excited to be kind of moving on from this project. So, in that vein, I'm also really excited. I I realized that this really cool way of exporting the movie and putting it on the web that doesn't take up a lot of space and doesn't compromise the image quality and all that, and it doesn't take a lot of time to export it either. So that's kind of exciting, and I'll be doing tonight as well. So hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to give a good report on that. But I want to talk. What I want to talk about is the Orion mystery. This is something that has been kind of. I was talking to a friend last night about something that I learned. There's this television show called Ancient Aliens, and it's on the History Channel 2, and I've been watching it on Netflix, but I actually watched it a couple of years ago on YouTube, and so I started to watch it this time because it said that they had new episodes. So I wanted to see the new episodes, but those are in the second season of it, and you have to go through all the first seasons to get to the second season on Netflix. So I started to rewatch some of these, and apparently the information that I've received over the past 2 years in studying things like astral projection and whatnot has really changed my view of, or informed me of, a whole nother perspective that obviously I didn't have like 2 years ago when I watched the first part of watch it for Ancient Aliens things for the first time. One of the main things that I've learned in studying all this stuff, and especially having to do with these archaeological sites I discovered in Big Sur and whatnot, and the information that's pointing to, the Hopi story of the survivors of the last world purification by flood and their place of emergence in the fourth world. And how you doing, brother? Good. What's up? You bet.
Now, how do you get inspired to stuff you just see in the video, or what?
Sometimes just I have no idea what it is I'm going to paint, and I intentionally don't have any idea what I'm going to paint when I start painting.
That's awesome.
They used to have a television show on cable in town. I did like 28 episodes, and I would paint a painting in 28 minutes.
Really?
And sometimes it was live, and I would intentionally go in there without a clue what I was going to paint, and complete a painting in 28 minutes, and it was pretty exciting, to just find out what was going to end up. And so now I do a live stream. Yeah, you're on camera right now, actually. There's broccoli. Hi, broccoli. So. As far as where does one get inspiration? There's only one place, and that's the universe within everything, right?
They're very good at it, that's for sure.
Thank you.
How much is the triangle doing?
In that format, it's 45. You can also have it in a frame, and those are 35. Meter, this size is 20. All the frames are hand painted by me as well, and they're real glass. These are made out of recycled plastic that I paint with acrylic. That's painted on a the original is painted on a canvas, and then I take a digital photograph and then make a print of that and spray mount the print onto this particle board that's made out of recycled wood from Canada, and then paint the edges and then cover the whole thing with a urethane lacquer. So it's kind of a pretty involved, long, convoluted, labor-intensive, yeah, lots of sweating involved. But
That's really cool. I like that a lot.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
What do you do for a living?
Okay, so back to my obsession. So, in watching these shows, I realized that that you have these people trying to explain why certain things happen in the past, and their answer is always that it has to do with ancient aliens and all that kind of stuff. Eastern astronauts or whatever, beings from other star systems coming to Earth and making stuff happen. And while that's certainly a possibility, one of the things that is totally overlooked is the fact that us living here on this physical planet, on this physical plane, is only one plane of many, and that when we die, or I should say dying, is one way of our consciousness passing between dimensions, but it's not the only way, obviously. Another way is when we go to sleep, right? And another way is through astral projection, obviously, and dreams and visions and all that kind of stuff are some of the ways that we pass communication between dimensions. And it seems that science and the people that are trying to explain things like all the stuff that the ancient aliens people are into, totally overlooks that as a physical reality. And as a possible explanation for why certain things happen. Like, I'll give an example. I watched this. They had an episode on the Nazca lines in Peru. There's the Nazca Desert, Nazca Plateau, excuse me. And there are these. The whole thing was kind of popularized by Eric von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods book back in the early 70s. And he there's this huge plateau, and there are these effigy things on the huge. They're so huge that if you're just standing there, it doesn't look like anything. But the only way that you can see that it's like a giant spider or a giant monkey or a hummingbird or whatever is if you're in an airplane or something, right? And so the question is, they know that these are pretty ancient structures, and some of them are very, very detailed and very precise. So it's been a mystery as to, well, did the ancient peoples that made these things, did they create hot air balloons, or so it really leads itself to conjecture about ancient aliens and spaceships and all that kind of stuff, right? But a couple months back, I read an article about this. About this. I think it was either written by a shaman or quoted in a shaman, and he said that the Nazca lines are they were used as initiation tools, essentially teaching people, training people to be shamans, by being able to go, training them to be able to astral project. And because, and so they would take people out into the desert, and they would, sit together in a circle, and they would, go into their trance and leave their body. And it was kind of a test to see if you were actually able to astral project, if you could come back, leave your body, go up above, see what that diagram was, and then come back down and come out of the meditation, come out of your trance, and explain what it was that you'd seen, which makes a whole lot of sense. You don't need a hot air balloon, and you don't need ancient aliens, right? And by the same token, all you need is a shaman would know how to, because a shaman is someone who passes between the worlds, passes between has been trained and trained themselves to be able to pass between dimensions. Makes perfect sense to me, but and then I look at the fact that one of the reasons why our culture hasn't given this much thought is because our culture has virtually eliminated the existence and its reliance on the shamanic model, right? Like, you have a population. I mean, just in America alone, there's population of over 300 million people, and there's not one officially recognized shaman out of in 300 million people. Whereas shamanism is not about religion. It's a the role or goal that a shaman plays in a community is to help the community stay healthy, stay psychically healthy, right? Stay in balance, both in the physical world, but also in the spiritual realms as well. In all their dimensions, right? So that in a way, a shaman is like a caretaker of the souls of the community, right? So if you eliminate all the caretakers of souls, and you abrogate that responsibility to people that are essentially blind, spiritually blind, right? Because they've cut themselves off from, like, I'm speaking in terms of like Christian priests. Most Christian priests, they have going for them is a dogma, right? Based on either the Roman Catholic Church or some sect, and it all comes out of books. Somebody's philosophy of Christianity, and but it has no connection to what's actually going on, psychically and spiritually, in terms of each soul's interaction with their own selves in multi dimensions. Never mind, as a group or as a community, and so it's no wonder that we have mental hospitals full of people that are out of balance, because most mental illness is spiritual crisis, And it's where you have individuals that are out of balance with their true nature. And traditionally it would be the shaman's job to help that person realign. And one of the ways that they would be realigned, help to be realigned, is by helping a person make sense of what's happening with them. And indeed, it's like if you've ever been, your car broke down on the side of the road, and you didn't know what was wrong with it. It's not knowing what's wrong with it that is the most disturbing. You have no clue. You turn the key and nothing happens, and you don't know anything about engines. Or even if you do know something about engines, but you check everything that you know, and it still doesn't work, and you don't know why. It's that not knowing why that is, sort of the source for most of your anxiety about the situation. And especially if you don't know how you're going to get out of that situation, like you don't have AAA, you don't have a cell phone or something like that, and it's late, it's dark, and there's no cars coming. It's the fear of the unknown that is the most disturbing, spiritually, psychically, and psychologically. And so when you, as soon as somebody pulls over, comes over, and they look at your engine and they say, "Oh, this wire is looks like you fried this part right there." That's, at least then you're like, "Oh, okay." All right, now I know. Okay, so I know I'm not going to be able to drive this away from this spot unless I fix that thing. So I need to arrange to have the car move to a place where that can be taken care of, right? And that person that came along was a messenger, right? And that just knowing and having somebody rationalize your experience for you is a tremendous relief. Well, what happens when you have somebody go quote unquote crazy, have a psychotic break, and they end up in a mental hospital, and the people that are there to quote unquote help them, all they have to offer is medication, because they themselves have no psychic or spiritual understanding of what is happening to you psychically and spiritually. And that is the root of the imbalance that you're experiencing, so they can't, say, well, your engine is, that has this wire and it burned out this part, and they just know that your car is not running, and you need to be kept, safe from harming yourself or somebody else. So they're not really in a position to intercede for you on the other side and go and essentially reclaim your connection to yourself, and explain all that to you. The only way, all they have to offer are words. They can't actually go and go to the other side and retrieve your the knowledge in the Akashic record about you, and the agreements that went into you having this psychotic break and so forth. So anyway, blah blah blah. Hello. Just doing my little live stream thing.
Incredible work.
Thank you very much.
By hand or laser or computer?
No, it's all by hand. Yeah.
So talented.
And blessed. Let's not forget blessed.
Blessed
Yeah.
to be talented.
Yeah. Well, everybody's talented, just not everybody's realizing what they're talented.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, anyway, blah, blah, blah. I went into that whole thing because, in watching this stuff about the ancient aliens thing, I realized that, we collectively need to be looking more in that direction. And, it's our destiny. There's no way that we're going to a couple of things I've been learning from my research. One is the population is at the moment, it's projected that the average fertile woman on the planet is going to make something like 2.8 children, right? And at that rate, by 2045 or something like that, we will be somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 billion souls incarnate. There are, estimates that in 100 years, we could have upwards of twice that number of people incarnate, right? Now, the only way that's going to happen in a healthy way is if more people are developing their psychic awareness of who they really are and where they really come from, and recovering what has been lost, which is this, the shamanic traditions, what are known as the shamanic traditions, but are really just, people being psychically aware of who they are, and cultivating that consciously cultivating on a daily basis their awareness of themselves in, not just on the physical plane, but in all the realms, I think this begins on a personal level when we all recognize that sleep is sacred. It's a sacred time, and that we need to honor that. And on our personal level is to recognize that everybody that we encounter is an immortal. There are no people on this planet that are not immortals, and so anyway, I'm kind of getting away from a point that I wanted to talk about. Okay, there's in this Ancient Aliens thing, one of the, I'm watching these shows and stuff, and I realized that there was this there's this one show about Orion, the constellation Orion. It turns out that the Hopi land is in northeastern Arizona, and the main the center of Hopi land to this day is a collection of villages that exist on these three mesas, right? And they mesas are kind of like buttes, right? They kind of extend out like that, and there's little canyons in between them. And it turns out that those three mesas and those villages are the belt of Orion. And it turns out that the other stars in the constellation of Orion, at each one of those stars on the Earth, in Hopi land, there is a village, or the ruins of a village. And so this says that one of the reasons why the Hopis put themselves there was to embody this configuration. And to them, that area is the center of the universe. That's what it's called. It's the center of the universe. And this was the only. They were only allowed to establish themselves in that place after they had, made these migrations to the edges of North and South America, and that each clan had traveled a full swastika. Half the clans traveled the swastika that rotated in one direction, and half the clans rotated in the other direction before returning to the center. Now, if this was the only place on the planet where that was that was going on, you'd say, well, that's pretty cool. I mean, you know, they're kind of obsessed about this one constellation, but, you know, that's pretty cool, right? But as it turns out, they're not the only one. In Mexico City, or down in Mexico, in the vicinity of Mexico City, there's a place called Teotihuacan. And this city was flourished around, its high point was around 500 AD. It was established around 200 BC. And it was essentially abandoned probably by about 800 AD. So for roughly 1,000 years, this city was in existence, inhabited. And at one point, it was the largest concentration of humanity in the Western Hemisphere. There were roughly, it's estimated there were roughly about 120,000 people living there. And the central part of this city, the city was, it was several miles in diameter, but on the core of it, the central part of it was these pyramids, and what's known as the Pyramid of the Sun, the Pyramid of the Moon, and I can't remember what this other. I can't remember what the third one is, but it turns out that they are essentially in the configuration of the Belt of Orion as well. And it turns out that, the rest of at the other star points along in the area are that would be the Belt of Orion. I mean, the constellation of Orion. There are other ruins, right? So there you have again the connection of ancient peoples in the Western Hemisphere that have configured their whole society, built their whole cities and whatnot, so that they are mirroring this constellation, this celestial constellation on the Earth. Yeah.
Follow you on Instagram and follow back.
We'll see. What's your Instagram?
It's _Ink. So we both do tattoo artists.
I think. Really? I'm just playing with it. So, you can just photograph that. Okay. We got 30%, and it's 3:33 p.m. The live stream.
Gotcha.
Thanks a lot, Brian. What is your Instagram?
It's _Ink.
Blessing. Thanks for calling. It's 15.
Are you here all the time?
In spirit. Bless. So, if it was just in this hemisphere, that would still be pretty cool, right? Except that, the most famous pyramids in the world are the pyramids of Giza, where I was for the millennium, right? And it turns out that the pyramids of Giza are the Belt of Orion as well. And, supposedly those pyramids, they're obviously older than the pyramids in Mexico, and they're older than the Hopi villages, but supposedly there's no connection between those cultures, and it kind of makes you wonder of all the constellations, of all the star groups in the sky, why three ancient cultures, three of the largest ancient cultures that we know of on this planet, why all three of them have, you know, patterned themselves, put so much energy into, like, the pyramids of friggin' Giza, for goodness sakes. They're huge, gigantic structures. It took the man hours to build them, and we still don't know how they were built, you know. But it tells us the size of them and everything. Tells us how important this was. The fact that each one of the cultures made this a central tenet of the culture was the patterning after the Orion constellation, what we call the Orion constellation, star pattern. What's up with that? You know, what's the information? What's the and the fact that I have to ask that question, the fact that it's not common knowledge now, it's not known, it's a mystery now. But back in the day, you know, 2,000 years ago, there were people walking around that could tell you point blank what the connection was. But now it's all, you know, we have no idea. We have only conjecture, right? I mean, there's lots of funky New Age folks that have, you know, sold a lot of books on the topic, you know, and you can Google them and everything, but it's all conjecture. There's the fact that it's not common knowledge now, when at that time, I mean, you were literally living in, if you lived in one of those places, you were literally living in the constellation of Orion. Crazy, you know? And so, and another thing. So another thing I wanted to talk about is this. Okay, this is connected to that. The Hopi, as I said before, they before they were allowed to have permission to return to the center, return to the center of the universe, where Hopi land, and establish Hopi land that we know of today. They each had to make the migration to the edges of the landmass, right? Both North and South America. And once again, that when each of the clans reached the edge of the landmass, you know, like all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, all the way to the Arctic Circle, all the way to Tierra del Fuego, and all the way to the West Coast, that each of the clans had to, half the clans would turn left and half of the clans would turn right before returning to the center, right? And thus each clan would travel a swastika. Now these migrations took place over generations, and each clan was accompanied by certain specific kachinas, who were said to be beings from other planets and star systems, who guided them on their way, and that each clan was the keeper of a specific body of knowledge, right? So there is this place that I talk about in the Emergence Beyond 2012 book and movie. That's near my friend Jennifer Beach's house in Peebles, Ohio. It's this place called the Serpent Mound in Ohio. And according to Frank Waters in his book, The Book of the Hopi, he he showed aerial photographs and diagrams of the Serpent Mound to a member of the Serpent Clan, and what the member of the Serpent Clan said was that these that the Serpent Mound in Ohio was one of either 4 or 5 serpents, guardian serpents, and that the one in Ohio was the guardian serpent of the East, and that there was one for each of the other directions, and so there was the one in the West, and I think the site in Big Sur is the guardian serpent of the West, and he actually gives a name for each one of them. So the one in the West is called Katoya, which means the black serpent, which is the black is a symbol of the West in the Native American symbol for the 4 directions, right? So the one in the East, I can't remember what the name of it is, but it turns out that the Serpent Mound itself, if you aren't familiar, you might want to Google it, okay? The Serpent Mound it starts in the south with a spiral that goes 3 loops around like this. I've walked it. I've spent a couple of days there over years at different times of year, and twice at in the vicinity of the winter and summer solstice. So I photographed it, and I found there's a cave underneath it, and a little cave underneath it, which plays into what this ancient technology for using telluric energy and channeling telluric energy, essentially charging the site by ensuring that certain types of ley line energy will be attracted to the site. Anyway, the Serpent Mound itself, the tail begins with 3 spirals like this, and then it goes 7 loops like this, and the whole thing is in a crescent. And then at the top, in the north, it's pointing towards the tail is pointing southwest, and the head is pointing to northwest, and so the whole thing makes a crescent. So you have 3 coils at the bottom, and then that opens up into 7 loops, and then at the top you have something that looks like a crescent around what looks like an egg. The mouth of the serpent is biting the egg. And when I was there last, there's a gift shop there, and I was reading a book in there, and it talks about how there was some anecdotal information passed on by native peoples of the region, and they said that the egg. Oh no! This is in Frank Waters' book. He talks about how the egg represents the village, the people in the village, right? And the serpent that it has its mouth around it is the guardian of the village, energetically guarding the village. And the head of the serpent and the egg points in the direction of the summer solstice sunset point, and the tail points in the winter solstice sunset point. And each one of these loops points to some significant astronomical event. And so the middle loop points towards the equinox, autumnal equinox or spring equinox, sunrise and sunset points. And these other, the other 2, there's 2 more, they point to the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. Is that right? Yeah, Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn. And there's 2 more loops, and no, that's it. That's it. But anyway, each one of those loops has, points towards some sort of significant astronomical or event or calendrical event. And And the whole thing is up on top of this bluff. And what my friend told me when I first, talked to her about, my friend Jennifer, I know her as Juniper. We met at a rainbow gathering in Arizona back in 1997. What she told me, she's a science teacher now, but science and math. But back then, I mean, she had always growing up. Was like an amateur natural history buff, and she's really into bugs, etymology, right? Or entomology. And one of the things that she told me about that place was that there's one of the oldest creeks in North America right there. So if you're up on the bluff where and you look over the edge, like where the village, the egg is, points over. It's literally, here's the egg, the tip of the egg, and then the bluff goes down like right there. And at the bottom there is there's this creek, and it's called Ohio Brush Creek. And she said that it's one of the oldest creeks in North America. And I was like, how do you know it's one of the oldest creeks in North America? And she said, because it exposes an ancient coral bed there and over by Cincinnati, and they've been able to carbonate, because it's coral. They've been able to carbon date it, and they figured out that it was, millions of years old. And so that means that there's been water running through that one spot for, a couple million years. So, let's see, where's it going with that? Coral bed. Oh yeah, iridium. So it turns out I'm watching this Ancient Aliens thing, right? And they're talking about the Serpent Mound. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. They're talking about the Serpent Mound. And then it turns out that the Serpent Mound is on the edge of a giant impact crater from, most likely, it's either from a comet or a meteorite. And they know that it's from some sort of celestial object because there's an increase in the amount of iridium that there is there. There's an iridium spike. And it's literally, when you look at the topographical map, you can see that it's literally sitting on the edge of it, of this whole crater that goes for miles and miles and miles east of Serpent Mound. And it makes you think that the Serpent clan, one of their, the ancient symbol for the serpent is energy, right? In this case, earth energy. So it's no big stretch that that this Serpent clan shamans knew what this specific place was, the energy potential of that specific place, and chose it specifically so to erect their Serpent Mound, the guardian serpent of the East. And my theory is that they didn't go on these migrations just to be tourists. They went on these migrations to essentially rewire humanity's relationship to the Earth grid, because it had been quite a while since the whole Western Hemisphere had been inhabited before, if it had ever been inhabited before. So anyway, we're depleting the battery down to 6% at the moment, and that means I've talked a while. So just to wrap that up, iridium is a radioactive substance that is not, it's very rare on the Earth, but it's very, you know, it comes from space, basically. And so wherever it shows up, they have a pretty good idea that it, on the Earth, that there was some kind of, like, you know, it got there from, it came there, got there from space. So to be continued. Don't you hate that stuff? I hate that when they do that. To be continued. What are you gonna do? Where's it going? I gotta know. So anyway, I really don't know where I'm going with all that, but it's fascinating to delve around in the great mystery, you know, and so essentially, you know, the shamans, you know, when you're a shaman, when you travel between the consciously between the dimensions, you have access to the Akashic record. You know, you have access to the ultimate reality, and so it's no big stretch now when you're aware of that to think, well, how did they know where to go? Because they were being directed from their higher selves and the collective human unconscious, or collective human superconscious, essentially, you know, and that, you know, the Kachinas were you know, disembodied entities that they could encounter, you know, not in the physical plane, but in the astral planes, that would give them guidance to, you know, where to go and what to do and all that kind of stuff. So it makes perfect sense, right? Yeah. To me, anyway. And I feel good about it. So, what are we doing? Oh yeah, we're closing this out. So tomorrow is Thursday, Jupiter Day. So we'll be doing a show tomorrow. Yay! And so once again, hi. Thanks for watching, and remember, we love you.